Welcome back to the D5 Render series. In this part, we'll cover how to import and place 3D models inside your scene. You'll learn how to use tools like the brush and path for fast object distribution, how to adjust model settings like lights, and how to bring in AI-generated 3D assets. We'll also go through basic render settings and how to enhance your final image using AI. Let's get started. So this is where we left off last time, and the first thing that we are going to be doing is to create new layers so that we can keep our scene nice and tidy. For this, I'm going to go into the layer tab and add layer here, right click and rename it, and the first assets that we're going to be importing are going to be trees. So let's type in trees. Now let's go ahead and add another layer, and this layer is going to be called plants. And for the moment, let's add another layer, which is going to be called people. So let's begin with these assets and make sure to activate the trees layer by just clicking on it. Okay, so where do I want to place these trees? Well, on these green areas right here. So let's jump into assets. Let's go into the model tab and let's type in tree. The object that I'll be using, it's this one. So there are multiple ways in which we can distribute this 3D model on our scene. And we can check them by going all the way down here. So we have the brush tool, we have the eraser tool, and finally the path tool. Now I found out that the brush tool, it's actually more useful for creating large areas of trees. But this green area is supposed to be more like a park, so this tool is not going to be that useful. However, let's go through it really quick. So as soon as I click on it, you'll see that I end up having this region, and these boxes that you can see on the top right corner will also be activated. But in this case, I'll be just using this tree. So if I just check on this box and start left clicking like so, we can cover large areas of these trees right away. Now, if I wanted to delete them, I would just go ahead and click on this eraser tool and delete them like so. But in our case, we are going to be using the path tool. So let's click on it. And I want the trees to be right next to our pedestrian walkway. And the only thing that we have to do is to click wherever we want our path, like this. Now we can press the escape key and we are going to be ending up with these parameters. Let's go through them. First, we can change the number of trees. So if I go ahead and go all the way to 20, you'll see that we end up with something like this. But I think the number of trees at 5, it's fine. We can change the direction, but you can see that all of them are rotating the same way, which is not really that useful, as we want to have a different rotation for each one. So we can randomize them, for which we can use the random direction parameter. So let's increase it a little bit. Then we can increase the random spacing value so that the trees are not evenly distributed. And we also have the random offset, which I'm also going to be increasing a bit. We are not going to be changing the size of it, but we are going to be changing the random size, because obviously trees in real life are not the same height. So let's increase it like this. And I can go ahead and duplicate this path. So if I press the shift key, I can easily do it like this. Let's move this a little bit to the side so that we can actually see our path a little bit better. And I'm going to be dragging it a little bit to this other side too. Okay, if I go into this path now, I'm going to be changing the parameters slightly to avoid this repetition. So make sure to always avoid repetition, especially in nature, because that would just kill the realism of our scene. Okay, this is looking great. Let's add a little bit more of detail to this front area. Again, I'm going to be using the path tool. So let's go to assets and I'm going to now head over to flowering shrub. And remember to just delete what we typed in the search bar, grab the path tool. And the flowers that I'll be using this time is going to be these Rosa rugosa, interesting name. Now probably these Caria japonica. So I'm just trying to give it some color while also maintaining some green. And we can go with this other one too. On the list, we are going to be getting rid of the tree because I only want to have plants now. And let's start drawing. I can actually close this tab now and just have this garden like this. Now press the escape key and let's change the numbers. So we're going to be needing loads more. So we can go all the way to 100 now. Let's also make sure that we avoid repetition. So random spacing alongside with the random size. And by the way, if you want to keep adding more 3D models, you can just click on this add icon and we can bring in this purple one. All right, maybe not that one. And we can delete it from the list by going to our models tab and clicking on this negative icon. So let's go with this one. So we end up with 4 different type of plants now. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now let's head over to this other side. Again, click on this path tool, select the plants that we were using. Great, now let's close this tab. And we are going to be again following the pedestrian walkway. And we can actually close the whole park. So let's do that. Okay, let's press escape key now. Select the path and let's increase this all the way to 100. And unfortunately, in order to close these gaps, we would have to increase the size like this. But that's not what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is just to delete some of the points that we added. And we can do that by selecting the path, go all the way up here and click on edit. So let's delete this point here, this point over here. So what I'm doing is just selecting those points and hitting the delete key. And there we go. Again, let's make sure to increase the value of our random parameters. And I'm probably just going to get rid of these tiny plants, which I believe are these ones. And as you can see, I'm actually using the trees layer for our plants. So in order to change an object's layer, what we need to do is to first select the object, which is in this case vegetation path 03. And I'm going to be clicking and dragging it so that I can drop it on the plants layer. I can do the same thing with this other path here. So click, drag into the plants. Now, if I use this eye icon, we can now see that the plants are on their respective layer. Now, for our first camera view, I'll be using this angle right here. So I'm going to be concentrating on adding more assets just on this angle. So now let's go ahead and add some buildings. So I'll be adding a layer for them and renaming it buildings. Head over to assets, and in this case, I'll be just typing in building. So I'll be grabbing this one and I'm going to be placing it all the way back here. This is actually too big, so I'm going to be scaling it down just a tiny little bit so that it doesn't compete with our architecture. Now let's head over to this one and I'll be placing it over here. I can also go ahead and grab this merchant integrated building and place it over here. And we might also want to add this commercial building. So let's go ahead and place it on this left side for now. Okay, let's close this. So I'm going to be placing this one all the way over here so that's inside this city block. And as for this guy, it's pretty huge, so we need to scale it down. So let's press the V key and lower it a little bit. Again, V key to change it to the move and rotate tool instead of the scaling tool. And I'm going to be rotating it. Let's place it over here. Now let's also move and rotate this guy so that it's facing the right way. And if you have a look at the top right corner, we also have some extra tools. For example, the flip tool. So if I duplicate it with a shift key, then use the flip tool like this and rotate it again, we can create a mirror of this building, like so. And actually, we can scale it down just a tiny little bit so that we can get both of these inside of our city block. Now, because we have so many buildings here, I can grab this one and duplicate it to the side. Now, obviously rotate it. And in this case, we can place it like this. As this road is never going to be seen, it doesn't really matter because remember that our camera is going to be positioned more or less on this area right here. Now, I also want to cover the background a little bit. So if I go into assets again and head over to backdrop plane, we can actually use this urban daytime view to fill up our background. So if I import it and place it here, for example, you will see that we end up having this nice backdrop, which we can rotate. So if I go back to the view that I want, for example, this one, we can use it instead of placing more 3D assets on our background. Now in this case, I'm already going to be setting up the view so I can go back to it quickly. And in order to do so, I'll just head over to the scene list and click on this add icon. So whenever I change my camera view, I can now click here on scene number 2 and we'll jump right into this view again. Now let's rotate this a little bit because it's competing again with our architecture and we don't want that. And we can fill up this city block over here by grabbing this guy, duplicating it with shift and maybe rotating it 180 degrees. Let's move it back a little bit and we can actually move this one a little bit to this side. And we can grab another backplate. So let's jump back into assets and we can try this free asset over here. So I'll just drop this one right here. Okay, now back to the scene 2. Quick pause. If you're enjoying the series and want access to the full D5 scene files, Rhino models, and even the PBR textures and AI enhanced assets I'm using, You can get them all on my Patreon. It's a great way to support the channel and follow along more easily. Links in the description. Now let's get back to it. Okay, now let's jump into the assets again, and we are going to be looking for the street lights. And these are located inside outdoor, road, and street lights. We can use this metal high street light, which looks pretty modern. And let's place it here. So make sure that you move it up like so. So let me just close this for the moment. You can press the Z key to zoom in into your selected object. Okay, let's actually just place it on this other side and rotate it 180 degrees. Now, if I press the Shift key, I can duplicate it. We might want another one over here. Now, if we want to group objects together, you can select multiple objects with the Control key. And if I go to the outliner, I can right click and select Group. Now I can just grab them and keep on duplicating them. So as you can see, it's much more easier this way. And again, I can grab with the Control key all of these, right click and keep on grouping them. Let's take them out a little bit so that they are actually illuminating our street a little bit. Okay, let's go back to scene 2 to see how this looks. I might want to delete this one, so I can just select one object from our group by pressing the Alt key. Now delete it, and we need to delete these lights now, so we can select them one by one with the Alt key. Alright, it's looking pretty good. Now I need some foreground elements so that I can give a little bit more of depth to my scene. And the best way to do that is by using trees. So let me jump back into my trees layer. Now to assets, and in this case I'll go to nature and flowering tree. I'm going to be using this Acacia farnesiana, so I'm trying my best to pronounce that. Okay, and I'll be just placing it here, and let's again close this, and over here too. But we need some further details like the base of our tree, because this doesn't really happen in real life. And because I don't want to go back to Rhino and model it from scratch, I can actually use the primitive objects from DeFi Render. So if I go back to assets, and now head over to basic model, I'll be grabbing a tube. So let me just place this one here, and also an oval. Let's close this, and obviously we need to make this smaller. So on the size parameters, I can grab the slider and drag it all the way to the left side. Now I just want to make this shorter. So what we need to do is to click on this icon. Now I can manipulate these parameters or these values separately, like this. Now the oval needs to go inside of this cylinder. So again, let's make it smaller by dragging to the left side. And I'll just leave it here for the moment and bring this one. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. Drag it down so that it's actually touching the ground. And it might be too short, so let's increase the height a little bit. Now again, grab the oval, make it smaller so that it's actually inside of our cylinder, and we can drag it upwards like this. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Maybe I can grab both of them and make it bigger. Now the only thing left to do is to add some materials to it. For this, I'll be hitting the M key. Now head over to materials, concrete, and I'm going to just use this lightweight concrete. So I'm going to be grabbing it and placing it right here. Now we need to add some ground texture to this oval, for which I'll be heading to outdoor ground, and let's use this black gravel ground. There we go. Hit the escape key to exit that mode, and I'm going to grab both of these objects and group them together by going into the outliner, right clicking and hitting on group. Now I can press the Shift key to just duplicate this and center our trees a little bit better. And we can actually go ahead and grab both of these and duplicate it all along our sidewalk. Something around this point should do. Let's go back to our scene now. And I'm going to be adding more detail to our street here by using decals. So let's see what those are. Back into assets, then model, and now let's look for decals, which are these. In here I have some road signs, which are great to add more detail and make our street more realistic. So let's grab this pedestrian crossing sign and place it right here. I can also go ahead and download the speed limit sign and this double solid line marking. Okay, awesome. So let's place these over here and this one right there. Now by using our move and rotate tool, I'll just reorganize these decals. Alright, so this is looking pretty good, but I'm going to slightly change my perspective, so something around this area. So make sure that we have this tree on our foreground, this will add a nice depth to our overall image. Again, let's add the scene. And before we go ahead and render this, I'm going to add a couple of cars and some people. So for this, I'll jump back into assets, now vehicle, and I'll grab this new energy car and probably this wagon over here. Let's close this. And as you can see, the wheels of the cars are moving and I don't want them to be moving just now. So once you have the car selected, turn off the dynamic option. And the same thing for this one over here. Let's park this white car over here. And to give even more detail to our foreground, we can keep this car on this other side. So we can check our scene again, maybe heading on the opposite direction so we can rotate it 180 degrees. Okay, nice. So this is passing by and this other car is probably just waiting for a pedestrian to walk. Something like this. And because I want more color, I'm actually going to be turning the lights on from this car, which is available on D5 Render. This is awesome. So we can turn on the lights. Okay. And we can also turn the lights on from this other car too. And finally, we can add some people. So let's go back to assets, character, Jerry will do. And now let's have this casual man looking at it. Okay, here we go. So we can just place this man here. All right. And we can have Jerry walking towards it. Pause the animation and we might want to see this other tree over here. So let me just type in Z and move this tree closer to our scene. So scene 3. Okay, we can move both of these objects to the side. So before moving on into rendering, I wanted to show you an extra tool that we can use here in D5 Render, which has to do with artificial intelligence. For this, I'll be going to this icon here where it says text to 3D. And what if, let's say, we wanted to add a fire hydrant to add a little bit more of detail to our overall scene? We would just type in on the prompt red fire hydrant and then just click on generate. And we have created 4 different models here. We can pick the one that fits our scene best, which is this one, and we would click on refine. And unfortunately, it doesn't apply materials to the 3D models, but that's fine as we can edit the predefined materials from D5 Render. And while we wait for D5 Render to refine this fire hydrant, I'm just going to be clicking on download here and let's place it right here. I'm going to be closing this for now, and obviously this is way too big, so we can scale it down. And once we've got it here, I'm going to go back to assets, into materials, then metal, and we can use this black iron metal here. Let's drag this to this side, click on the check mark and apply it to our fire hydrant. Pick the material with this eyedropper icon, go into the base color map and delete this. Now we can go back to the base color and turn this fire hydrant to a dark red color. Now the position for this fire hydrant is not very good, so we can move it somewhere else, maybe to this other side, for example. I'm gonna press the Z key and just locate it somewhere else. Doesn't really matter, as this was just an example for you guys to see how you can create new assets. Okay, let's go back to our scene now. And for us to render this perspective, I'm going to head over to image, where we are going to be looking at the camera parameters. In this case, I'm not going to go through all of them, as this deserves its own video. But for now, I'm going to click on the 16:9 on the aspect ratio. Let's go with a 2K resolution, and now just hit the render button. Now once that's done, let's go into the AI post processing button. I'm going to double click on scene 3, and right here on the AI enhancer icon, I'm going to drag this all the way to 1 and click on AI enhancer. And here we go, we've got the final result after the AI processing. And as you can see, we've got some really realistic details, such as this guy walking. He looks very real. And also we can spot that the plants look super real too. You can try and change the lighting a bit. So if I close this and head over to environment and change the HDRI from cloudy O2 to, for example, let's say midday, we can have a little bit more of color and contrast, but the light, it's still a little bit high. So let me reduce this to around maybe 0.5. We can try and render it again and use the same workflow. So activate the AI enhancer and see what we end up with. That wraps up part 3. Now your scene has models, movement, and detail. In the next episode, we'll dive into lighting setups and camera work to bring everything to life. If you want to grab the full scene, AI assets, or project files to follow along, you'll find everything on my Patreon. Links below. Thanks for watching, and see you in part 4.